actually in the venture capital world, and then kind of went to the other side of the table to work for Sims to learn how to build a company. So super excited to be here and chatting with you all.
So for some background, do you want to talk about like what you were doing before you came to Sim, like more context about that?
Me?
Yeah.
Yeah. So I was an investment analyst at a venture capital fund. Venture capital, for those of you who don't know, like a really quick background is we're basically private investments that invest in startups. I specifically invested in early stage startups. So where Sim is now in the information security, financial information, and healthcare spaces. So it was a pretty natural pivot for me to want to go from looking at different companies and thinking about really great investments to just like building one myself. And I think something I was looking to do was to learn from really seasoned operators, which the Sim team definitely is. They've totally delivered on that front. So that's kind of what I was doing before. It's very different from what I'm doing now, but definitely kind of in a similar space.
John, how about you?
Yeah, I mean, I mentioned briefly my last, I was at a startup, another small startup before this that was doing an AI platform for healthcare analytics. And I spent like 3 years there building out a team. And I did a lot of security and compliance work because we were in healthcare and protecting patient data was really important. So that's a kind of, small team like that. I work, like I just, wear a lot of hats. So I ran our website and did all of our WordPress content. And I also managed all of our cloud infrastructure, kind of just have to do whatever is needful. I spent, and then that was what I did just before that. And then I spent a long time doing, as I said, just different kind of cloud infrastructure roles. So where I worked with my two co-founders was at the company before that. It was a Localytics, which is like a mobile analytics platform. And basically like any company, like any kind of modern cloud startup now, right, there's a huge pain point around managing their cloud infrastructure as they grow. Like once you get, and it's not just like 5 people sitting around a table and you start to have a bunch of different teams, like there just starts to, you just have bottlenecks and problems and, things aren't reliable and things don't get deployed. And so teams that can kind of figure out their internal operations efficiently, not, like there's the business operations stuff, the stuff Jen is working on, and then just like technical operations stuff. They both need to work really well for startups to succeed.
Yeah, John, you can talk a little bit more about, I guess, like kind of how Sim actually got founded. What was that like process like? What was that kind of month like kind of with you and Adam and Yasif working on this?
Yeah, I mean, I guess the basic thing for starting a company, I feel like a lot of it is if you're not, it's a lot of it's just like timing. So as I said, I worked with Adam and Yasif at Localytics, which was a couple of years ago now. And basically you just have to kind of keep tabs on the people that you like and that you'd like to work with again. So like Adam and I had a standing coffee that we would do every month that we basically pretty much did every month for 3 or 4 years. We just like check in with each other. So he kind of knew when I was ready to move on from what I was doing, and I kind of knew when he was. We were just kind of fortunate that it worked out. We were just fortunate. We didn't really plan it that way. We were fortunate. We were both kind of ready to do something at the same time. And I think, we just decided, so initially it was the two of us, we just decided, all right, we could go get other jobs right now, or here we are, let's just give this a shot. So sometimes just kind of showing up and giving something a shot. And then Yasif, we actually went to for advice because he was running a different company and we wanted some ideas from him on fundraising. And similarly, just the timing, it was like, all right, it turns out he was also thinking about doing something new, which we didn't know. We were just somebody else we had just stayed in touch with because he's really smart and is just a fun person to know, basically. So then he kind of, it was really weird timing. He flew out to Boston in the end of February, and we kind of decided to work together. And then he flew back to the Bay Area, was planning to come back at the end of March, and then that didn't happen. And then we actually all didn't sit together in person until last week. We've been at this since then. So I guess the takeaway is a lot of it is like keeping up your network, investing in it, and like investing in that time to kind of keep in touch with the people that you want to work with again, even if you don't know like specifically what it's going to be. Just it's important to make those investments, and then some of it's just time, kind of recognizing the timing of things, and like the reality is that the opportunity, the time when you might find like two other people you want to start a company with, when you all are kind of in a spot where you don't have some financial or personal obligation that's going to keep you from doing it, is pretty rare. So you got to like jump on those.
So I know you mentioned just now that the sim team actually never got to like work in person for a very long time. Actually, for example, from Jin's perspective, Jin basically kind of joined the company after it was like it had like, kind of already gone remote, and like hasn't kind of really met up with the whole team. So I guess, what do you guys think about kind of joining a startup, kind of being in like a close-knit startup that's still kind of fairly remote, and like kind of hasn't had like a in-person meeting with like the entire team yet, basically, right? Especially kind of after all of our recent hiring.
I can take that one, and then Jon, you can supplement.
That sounds great, Jin.
Awesome. Yeah, I think the remote work culture is so interesting right now. We're like in such a crazy time and in such a crazy space. I will say though, I think that I think this is something that like attendees, when you're kind of like looking for a job, even if it's not a startup, you should be looking at regardless of what time it is or like where we are in the world. There's like the saying that I heard a lot when I was recruiting, but it's totally true. Like you come for the job and you leave because of the people. And I did like a lot of internships in a lot of larger companies. And when I was at my VC fund, I kind of like found that to be absolutely true. And so when I left my investments job and I wanted to work for a startup, I was really looking to kind of do like heavy diligence on what the team looked like and whether or not, it's kind of like when you're dating someone, right? Like if it's not a hell yes, it's kind of a no. And so like I wanted a hell yes on a team. So that meant like a CEO who was so good at pitching and so good at sales and really, really able to kind of like build a strong team culture. And that meant having a manager. In my case, it's Adam, who was our COO, who's just such a seasoned operator and just like knows how to manage not only like, business operations, but also kind of manage like my career, right? Because I don't know what I'm going to be doing 5 years from now. And I kind of want him to be watching out for me. And Jon's this like excellent, like super incredibly smart, like CTO who just like shifts it like nobody else is doing, And so I think like when you have such a strong belief in the team that you're working with, it's really easy to be remote. And I think it also helps that because you like the people that you're working with, so I actually invited our CEO Yasif because we're like coworker and friends. Like he came over to my house the other day for dinner and he met like a ton of my housemates who are also like startup founders. And, they were kind of like talking about the synergies of banking partners and who do we use as recruiting partners and stuff. So I think that like being remote hasn't been as bad as I think honestly like learning remote is for you guys in college right now.
I guess I'd say for me like remote, I've worked with a lot of distributed teams before, so it wasn't like a total shock to kind of be in a distributed environment. I worked with teams like, where I had teams like distributed around the world in Europe and India and Asia. So like I was kind of used to some of that stuff already. It is kind of weird that like, we haven't all like been able just to get together and you don't kind of get I think we've attempted to do some of the kind of you know, I don't know, water cooler or kind of random social stuff that you would get if you were in an office, you know, but which we do like, you know, every other week, but it's not the same as like, you know, if you were just sitting around, like everybody went and got lunch and like spent 20 minutes talking to each other. So there, it is different. And I think especially, it's also, I think, maybe as a founder, it's like a little hard. We have to, it's something we have to work at, because like some people on the team, like, you know, I don't know, I have kids, everybody's like home right now. So it's like, for me, like I've got plenty of other stuff going on, that has been keeping me occupied. And like but I think, where it's like, I'm kind of okay sometimes if I just kind of like, I'm working and then not working and like, I don't need as much of the social stuff, but I think it's important, if it's important to invest in that stuff, for everybody, for me too. And I think we have had to kind of try to make some of that stuff happen, make some kind of banter and kind of informal communication happen, because I think it would be easy to just go heads down every day and just like kind of forget that we're all humans and need to get along, and you know, it can't, and that's actually going to make our work better too.
Makes a lot of sense. I'm John. So to add on what you said, so when you move from your old company to Sim, it's kind of like in the middle of COVID, starting with COVID, and you know, you had your own family to take care of. So like, how did you actually take this step, like move from a full-time safe kind of job into a startup with like new people, I guess?
I don't know. It was like, you just kind of have to do it. I don't know what you asked. Like, I just did it. I guess I did I had a couple of mitigations. Like, I had, before we decided to start the company, we had some confidence that we would be able to fund it for a little while, like, you know, maybe like 3 to 6 months, that we could basically give ourselves enough runway to figure out if there was a there kind of. So we did have that as this kind of like, we weren't totally stepping off a cliff in that regard. And then I don't know, like I left my last company in a good, like, you know, it was a friendly breakup. And so like I was still doing some consulting for them, you know, on the side, and that was another kind of mitigation for me. So I guess it was kind of like, you took that there's like a big decision of like this big leap of switching, and kind of tried to make it into smaller ones. Like, okay, I have some consulting, and then we have a plan for how we can do this for 3 months. And then we just have to be really clear after 3 months, like, okay, let's take a step back. Like, is this working or not? And then like, you know, we were pretty comfortable, like, okay, well, if it's not going to work, then what is something else?
That makes a lot of sense. Jin, so same kind of question for you. So you came to Sim in the middle of COVID, right? So how's that like, you know, like, what are you like, you know, kind of stressed about it? Like, what were you thinking at that stage?
Yeah, oh my God, that's such a good question. So I quit my job before I found another one. I quit my job in end of February. LOL. So that was like a month before like tons of Americans like lost their jobs. But it was because, like, you know, when you're working a full-time job, it's just so incredibly difficult to be recruiting in a way that, like, well, to be like mindful of what you want and to like feel centered and be recruiting at the same time. And so I actually was like, oh my God, I made like a huge mistake. But it was actually like not as difficult as I thought it was going to be. I think working in venture really set me up with a really cool extended network of other investors who know other venture funds, who know startups I would be interested in. And so the time actually in COVID that I had off was very restful and was very like healing and centering, which I honestly would totally recommend that like everybody take like a few months off eventually when they're switching jobs, just to kind of center themselves and think about what they want to do next. If you have the capacity to do so. But I was actually introduced to Sim through one of their angel investors. And we're not even that close. Like we're just part of the same network, like Women in VC. And she posted the job opening, and I really kind of enjoyed like the pitch of the company and thought it was pretty cool. And then honestly, like just got sold on the idea super quick by Yosef. And looking back on it now, I think I should have done more diligence as like a former investor. Like I should have like made some calls with like character references and stuff, but I totally didn't because I was really excited about the company. So that's kind of how that happened.
Wow, yeah, that's awesome. Yeah, actually, kind of like on that note, what are your thoughts on kind of breaking into VC, going to VC straight out of college, right? Like, kind of, do you think it's a good idea for people for the most part, like, kind of versus like kind of if you had kind of gone straight into like a role, kind of like doing operating, like kind of maybe like something similar to your current position is in, but kind of like straight out of college.
Yeah, are you asking for yourself, Ryan?
Asking for everyone here.
No, I'm joking. Okay, yeah, Ryan and I have like had a lot of conversations about this. There is no like right path in life. They're very different things. I think having been an operator will make you a better investor. And I think, and hopefully this is true, but having been an investor makes you a better operator. John can call me out if that's not true. I think that my experience okay, so I think two questions, right? Like breaking into venture. Yeah, like venture total like black box in recruiting, and truly think that I just kind of like by some luck of the draw, opportunistically got hired by a fund. And I was actually recruiting for startup roles. But my principal was like, do you want to build one company or like learn to invest in 50? And I was like, oh my God, I want to do the latter. And it was really great. I think I had a lot of exposure to understanding business models. I had a really keen, like built a really keen gut on what made businesses tick, what market trends were looking like, a lot of things on the macro perspective. But I think I left for a reason, right? And that was like after 2 years in venture, I realized that, you know, like investing in companies without really having to kind of like, you know, pulled my sleeves up and having like done the building seemed a little bit out of touch to me. And I think now I'm doing a lot of like the non-sexy work of making sure that like we're compliant and like not getting sued, which is super important. But also I actually just had a conversation with Adam, our like kind of like COO, about this earlier. But like my former investor like experience is actually really helpful in terms of like how I make materials for if we want to, you know, build pitch decks and stuff. I build financial models really well, right? I think about like strategy and like 3 to 5 year plans really well, and such and such. So I think there's no right way. I think they're just totally different ways. And I think like whichever you decide to pursue, honestly, just like take a look at who you're working with and whether or not like you really align yourself with the ethos of that company.
That's amazing. So John, there's a question for you in the Q&A. I think you can answer that. The anonymous attendee thing.
Yeah, so any advice for someone looking to transition to a startup from a larger company? Yeah, so actually we were talking earlier today. I mean, I worked at a larger company for 14 years before I did startups. I think that, so what, as somebody now at a startup thinking about, you know, if I'm looking at hiring people, I think when I look at people from larger companies, then what I would sometimes worry about or just want to test for is like how specialized is this person? You know, at a large company, you can kind of afford to kind of have people with really kind of more dedicated, focused roles where like there's a lot of support around that, you know, really for a technical or non-technical role, like whatever it is, like there's just a lot more support because there's just a lot more people and you can really focus on one thing. And so really, I think one, you know, I don't know, like these are just kind of generalities, but like one thing that I would be thinking about is when I'm hiring somebody from large companies, like, does it seem like this person is going to be able to survive if like there's kind of not as much laid out for them, if they kind of have to do more of the stuff, or if like things aren't going to be as defined and more ambiguous. And so if I were looking to join a startup, I might want to see if I can cultivate experiences that kind of indicate, or just even just the way you position the experiences you talk about, where you can kind of talk about how you were able to kind of take a problem and kind of maybe work on it holistically, and like, you know, if you were, as opposed to just kind of, you know, sometimes it's really tough because sometimes in a large company you don't really have an option to do that. Like you kind of, in order to succeed there, you need to be a cog in a machine. So that can be difficult. But I would say that would be one thing to think about.
That's a really good response. So Jin, you got a question too on the Q&A panel? Are you gonna look at it?
Where's the Q&A? Okay. Sweet. What are the best resources you have found for vetting business models and generally on how to operate as a VCer? That's a really good question. So the VC space, it's really, so every fund is going to really differentiate from every fund, right? There are funds that, so they differ in terms of the stage that they invest in, right? So there are some funds that focus on really early stage companies, and those funds are going to really be looking at things like the founding team, like are you all legit, and like what is the idea, like what is the potential, and they're very, very focused on that. Whereas, you know, a lot of like the later stage funds focus on very different things, like what does retention look like, and so that's a thing. And then, you know, industry is different. Investors in health tech look at totally different like business models from investors kind of in like B2C swimsuit e-commerce, you know. And I like that, I guess that example rings top of mind because my former roommate is like part of that startup and it's so cool, but their like business model is so different from Sims. I think that even among like the similar stage VCs and the similar industry VCs, like every shop has a different kind of flavor. I think if you were to think about like the VC role, it can kind of be split into like 3 to 4 categories. I think you can split it into like sourcing, due diligence, portfolio management, and then 4 is like miscellaneous, et cetera, et cetera. Some shops are really top heavy, right? Like sometimes analysts need to have like 30 conversations in a week, and that's how they're tracking, you know, like how well they're doing. And then some shops are really into kind of portfolio management and growth. So I think it's about a fit in terms of personality and what kind of like strength you bring to whatever personality that fund has. So I think like it's kind of a cop-out answer, sorry, but I think it depends. I think it depends on the shop and it depends on who you are.
Yeah. And before we move on to kind of more questions from Vishnu and I, there's actually another Q&A question. So someone kind of asked, why did each of you choose to work with Sims specifically? Yeah.
Hey, John, you're gonna go first.
I mean, I'll just interpret this in terms of like, why did we decide to start this specific company? Like, we, you know, I think for us, when we knew we wanted to start a company, like, you know, we kind of wanted to start it with something we knew. Like we happened to be 3 engineers starting this company. So what we knew were kind of engineering and technical problems, right? And so we, and in particular, we had all, I think, we've all managed teams and like all seen like I was talking about before, like kind of the friction and pain points around, like as teams grow, like, do they stay efficient? Like the kind of problems that technical teams seem to have around, you know, and especially with the modern like cloud software, just like, it's just like actually hard to get stuff done. Like, you know, it's kind of weird, like creating good software is like still not really a solved problem. Like there's a lot of bad software. Like nobody really knows. If somebody tells you they know how to do it, then, you know, they're lying. So it's kind of cool. Like, so just in general, we knew we wanted to do something kind of like to help developer teams kind of move faster with better quality. And then, you know, Yasif and I specifically had just been in these health tech roles, and we've been like obsessed with security and compliance stuff. And there just seemed to be, when we started to test out some of our initial ideas, so we had a couple of different ideas for products kind of in this kind of developer tool space, like the ideas that were really resonating with people, like we would do little mock-ups or little just interviews. were around like the ones that were more security and compliance focused. And so we just kind of used our experience and the kind of feedback we got from just our networks of kind of asking people, hey, would you buy this? Does this resonate with you? Do you have this problem? That's how we got to the idea.
Yeah. So I think I already like mentioned how I thought like the people were great. And I truly do think that like if it's a great job, but like the people aren't great, like don't take the job. There's something else out there better for you. I also do very much like believe in the product. It's really interesting. Sim came at a time where I was going to accept an offer from an investment bank, actually. LOL. So glad I didn't do that. And as like a part of my interview process for that investment bank, like I had to like write basically an investment memo on the key like market opportunities I saw in some of the spaces I was familiar with. And I was actually writing about information security and kind of like the areas in which like of opportunity for like access management, which is kind of like an area that we're kind of like building out and working on today. So it was synergistic how that happened. The investors honestly like spoke really great things about it. And I think it was honestly just like a really good opportunity, right? Like I was their first, I'm super proud of this. I'm their first like employee hire. And like being that is really, really cool. It's like 3 founders and you for a little bit of time. Super small team. You get a lot of like opportunity, and like I was lobbying my boss like earlier this afternoon for like additional responsibilities, you know. I think that like if any of you listening to this have ever thought about like strategy consulting or something like that, and like that was a path that you had considered, because that was a path that I had considered because I was really attracted to the attributes of those types of roles, and then landed in like a big consulting firm like Accenture and realized that was totally not what you did. You need to look for an early stage startup opportunity, which you can run ops, because that is the role that is actually a lot of like strategy and operations heavy. That's going to grow you into the person and the skill set that you're eventually going to want.
Yeah. Also, really warm welcome to Adam, who's currently kind of Sim's only product manager. So welcome, Adam. Adam joins us from kind of Penn's M&T program, as well as kind of coming off of a role doing PM at Microsoft.
Thank you so much. And so sorry that I'm late, guys. I think there are 2 important lessons here. One is that it's very important to unplug sometimes. And the second is that you should direct all questions for managing your calendar to me, the one who thought that this started at 6:30 Eastern time. So welcome.
So Adam, do you want to introduce yourself and talk about yourself a bit?
Yeah, sure. So you guys said I'm Sim's product manager right now. I did come here from Microsoft before, and I am originally was at Penn before that. Came from Penn's M&T program, where I think that I have a more unique path. I think that sports have always been a really important part of my life. So I was on Penn's wrestling team as well, which is, I think that a lot of how I approach startups actually comes from the lessons I've learned playing sports for a long time and competing. So, John, if you've seen me up at 3 a.m. finishing the proposal for the next day, it's because I've done that before for sports. So yeah, I mean, I don't want to disrupt the.
What were you doing for sports at 3 a.m? Explain that.
Toughness training.
I see.
Thank you. Yeah, so I don't interrupt the panel too much, so we'll move on with the questions, but excited to share what I've learned.
Yeah, I feel like kind of some of the questions that Jin and John have already answered. We can just kind of run by Adam real quick.
Rapid fire me.
Yeah, so kind of one of them all the questions people ask about is kind of why did you choose to work at Sim specifically? So kind of curious about your thoughts on that.
Yeah, definitely. So one, because my background is like technical stuff, but also I really enjoy business, like the more business side of things, like interacting with people, figuring out like, what is this user action really going to look like? But like part of my brain and my work process also has to involve like code. Like I really need both of those things. And so one, I saw SIM as like a very, very technical product in which I could help grow, yes, the technical side, but also the business side. So that was very attractive to me. In addition to the fact that, when I first got introduced to Yasif, who's our CEO, I spent a while researching the technologies that SIM is built on, and there is a like kind of platform, like a system architecture and interaction architecture that you can find on the website and in our docs and our demos. And like the more I thought about and understood these technologies and how they were playing together, I was like, this is like a beautiful system design. I don't know how much you guys have talked about it, but like the workflow generation and customization and then interaction on top of infrastructure as code. And just like, I was like, wow, this is like a huge problem. And then the way that SIM is dealing with it is just like, it's elegant. Honestly, it's elegant. There's I'm just like math and code that just like seems to fit together really well. I was like, I want to work there. And then the second thing was I did experience some of these frustrations when I was at Microsoft. Part of what I was doing was tracking, there are these things called containers, and Microsoft is obviously this giant organization. And part of what I was doing was like tracking everywhere in Microsoft where containers were used, which meant that I had to get like 25 or so like data entitlements, right? Like the ability to view and manipulate this data. And I had to do that across like 4 or 5 different data request systems and talk to this person, talk to that person. And it was an absolute nightmare. And so SIM was like kind of SIM's leading use case is access management, making that a really easy process.
Adam, I think another thing though is I think you did something neat when you were going to join, you also did that whole, like the whole interview process, I think probably helped a lot too, right? That was kind of cool.
Oh yeah, totally. So I don't know if I've ever told anybody at SIM this, but part of why I joined was because I thought you guys did a great job like interviewing me. And I also stalked all the other interview tasks. And I found like the GitHub repos for all your engineering tasks. So we should probably make those private before everyone on this call goes and applies and has like 3 weeks to work on their thing.
It's fine.
But so yeah, hiring is really hard. And so a little more of my background, like when I was in college, I left college for a little bit and was working on an e-commerce company. And like everyone says hiring is hard, but that's when I really, really felt that hiring is really freaking hard. And so what Jon was talking about, like, I just thought they gave me really good tasks that were actually indicative of how good I would be at the job. And I was like, oh, well, if they understand how to hire like this, then they're going to build an awesome team that I want to be part of. And so Jin was hire 1, I was hire number 2. And so there was not this amazing team yet. Like, well, there was an amazing team. There weren't like all these amazing hires yet. And I was like, no, they're going to get like really good hires. Like this is going to be an amazing team.
I didn't realize you folks were like tracking these, like the stats on.
It's like a source of pride for us when we talk about this, Jon.
I mean, it's also not too tough.
I can see for Jen why it is, but I mean, being the second hire is like, I mean, being the first hire.
I mean, yeah. Hey, they say first is the worst, second is the best.
Oh, Adam. Hey.
Jin is also the best. Jin is actually much better than me. Yeah. Cool. Ryan, do you have any other rapid fires for me?
Yeah. I guess kind of any advice. So this was like very specific to you. Any advice for someone looking to transition to start from a larger company?
Yeah. Get used to defining your own processes, and there are a million differences between working at a place like Microsoft and a very small company like SIM. But the biggest thing was at Microsoft, I always felt like I was on the lookout for the process I should follow, because when I didn't follow it, my manager or somebody else said, hey, we do that a certain way here. And at a place like Microsoft, they're not just trying to get in your way. There is in an organization like of that size, there is a good reason for following these like standardized processes some of the time. At SIM, there are processes for some things, but when I need to go do something, I'm not too worried about like, oh, what is the way that the last person did this? And I think to myself, like, what's the best way to do this for our goals, our needs, et cetera? And then I do it that way. And so if you're not prepared for that, it can be a little bit jarring.
I see. Yeah. I think this is a good segue into another kind of audience question. And I guess for all of you, apart from the people of Sim specifically, kind of what made you guys choose to work in startup over working at a kind of a large company, like kind of rejoining, like either kind of, for example, where you were working before, or kind of joining like a different kind of large tech company.
I think somebody else should talk for a little bit.
Yeah, I mean, I mentioned I worked at large companies for 14 years, and like honestly, when I first started, it was kind of like a little bit of like FOMO. Like at the first, I was like, oh, I kind of want to go do something at a smaller company because that seems fun. But I guess the reason I had that is that I was, I think I kind of what Adam was just talking about, of kind of wanting to be able to kind of define processes, wanting kind of a little more autonomy, wanting to be kind of like figuring stuff out and not just kind of trying to fit into processes that already exist. Maybe that's just a personality or something. Like, so I was kind of had this itch that I was like, I kind of want to go somewhere where I feel like I can kind of define a little bit more of like what my day is going to look like, what shape more of what my work is going to look like. And I think, once I was in small companies, then I kind of, so sometimes, like, do I think about going back to—
There's a spider on my desk. Let me take care of it.
I'm sorry. Dude, there's a spider on Jen's desk. So I think as far as like why I liked being at a small company now, like, it's just like there's new stuff all the time. It's just kind of fun. Like, there's new people, there's new problems, and I just find it really energizing. It also can be it can be hard too. Like the fact that there aren't necessarily there's not necessarily a process all the time. Sometimes you don't have like the kind of support systems that you can lean on. Certainly, like, in the spring in COVID times, I mean, I think for a lot of, if you have a lot of people with families, it was probably pretty good to be at a bigger company where there was, they could kind of afford to slow down in a way that a startup can't. So there are definite advantages to bigger companies to think about. So if you can do it, if you can kind of, if the risk works for you, because there is a lot of risk, and you're kind of okay with the ambiguity of just kind of like, things not being as well defined, it can be a lot of fun, but it can be really hard too.
So the thing about spiders is that I really don't like to like kill bugs or like critters, because I mean, they're not really doing anything, right? They're just kind of like, I'm fearful. So it's always that logistical hassle, because I need to find like a cup, and then I need to find like a thing to like chase it into the cup, and then you need to like let it go into nature, and it doesn't want to go.
Where did you put it? Where did you leave?
It was in a cup, and then now it's in the backyard.
Okay.
That's
yeah, cool. Sorry. I totally did not have time to think about this question. What was it again?
Let's maybe we'll let Adam go first. Like her thoughts.
It sounds good.
I actually got lost in John's answer. It was such a good answer that I couldn't remember the original question.
Oh my gosh.
It was kind of about what made you guys choose to work at a startup over a large company, and kind of like not kind of super like specific, just kind of more broadly.
Yeah. Okay. Right. So I feel like I did talk about Microsoft and Sim specifically before, but like, I think that those are also very fitting of like how I would make this decision more broadly. Like, one, at a startup, you can really choose work that you actually care about. Like if you go to work, if you're young and you go to work at a bigger tech company or a big company in general, they're very likely going to put you on a team and tell you to do a bunch of things. And they might be interesting, and I'm sure you'll learn a lot. But if you go to a small company, like you pretty much know what you're going to do there. And it's very easy to connect yourself to the mission. So my answer is really caring about your work, being motivated by your work.
Okay, that was also a really good answer. So yes, and I truly think that there's this book, right, called like The Defining Decade. And I don't necessarily, that's like 100% true, but I do think that when you are right out of college, these are some of the years where you are going to experience the most concentrated amounts of growth in terms of your career learning, because you really don't have much else to focus on, like a family and things like that. So I think that like when you're working for like the Accentures and like the Microsofts of the world, you're doing like a really, really good job at like playing a part in an ecosystem and an institution that's like already constructed, right? But I think when you're at a startup, you actually are able to kind of like have the mold in your hand and be able to construct the things that you really think, are going to be effective and the things that like you believe in. I think like the opportunity for professional growth is like monumental. And I think the opportunity then that you ride with the company that you're working for in terms of company growth is also significantly faster than whatever you're going to be doing at a larger company.
Makes a lot of sense. So I kind of had a question for all of you. So how'd you guys build a network to meet cool people and maybe end up with them? Because Jin, you told me you met people from the Women in VC Club, and Adam met people from, I don't know how you met Yasif, but other group, I mean. But yeah, so there's an audience question about the same thing, asking how do you build a network in your professional life? So could you answer that, and also more context of how you met Yasif and like how that happened, how you convinced you to actually work in the place?
I mentioned that like Adam and I we would have Adam and I had coffees for years even before we decided to start this company. So I'd say in general, investing in you just have to like kind of, there's not like a secret, just like you have to invest in like making time for it. Like for me, it's helpful to actually like even with like kind of friends or like work friends, like I schedule stuff, like I schedule monthly stuff, which maybe kind of seems like a little like weird to like schedule stuff if you're just hanging out. But I find it's actually really helpful. Like, so then, even if like whatever, for some month, I don't know, we can't meet for coffee or something because things come up, just to have some sort of cadence where you kind of keep up with the people that you kind of care about and like to work with again is really important. So I think that's at least what I've done is just actually beyond the answer is just you have to like kind of be mindful of actually making it happen. Like it won't just happen passively. You have to kind of make an effort to stay connected with the people you care about.
Yeah, I think that, well, one, it's good for me to hear that because I think Jon has more experience than me, and like that's a little validating for what I was going to say. I'm not at that career point where it's like, oh, I've been so busy my entire life and I have to make so much time for it. But I was going to say, when you're very young, in college or recently out of college, I think that it can be easy to like see certain people as a path towards something, right? You say, oh, right, like I'm at some venture capital meetup and, like the partner from some firm is talking, and afterwards you want to go up to them and you want to introduce yourself. And like, I'm not saying you shouldn't do that. That's great. But there have been times that I've gone up and introduced myself to some, the speaker after an event, and we talked for a minute or so, and we like didn't, kind of connected on this professional level. We maybe with some mutual interests, but like the relationship didn't really go anywhere. And so my advice is to try to connect genuinely. So I met Yasif through somebody that I call a friend who is an investor. I mean, like, and we've known each other for a couple of years, and we just like genuinely really get along, and we enjoy, like, we're genuine friends. And like we we just enjoy talking about startups and talking about venture and, you know, all these things. And so ultimately it really helped me because I got introduced to the head of, you know, where I work now. And John's making fun of me. John's making fun of me on our Slack, but that's okay. The point is, I would say connect genuinely, because all the people I've ever tried to introduce myself to with the hopes that like, oh, this is like this is a venture partner, or this is somebody that can like really help me in the future. Like those relationships didn't really go anywhere because like who really has all the time for keeping up with a million people that they like don't really care about?
Yeah, so I think my answer is like along the same lines. I think like every individual, like no lie, is a star. And I think that a lot of the times like your path or your journey gets like I'm gonna minimize my Slack. Like your journey honestly gets like clouded by a lot of things that you feel like you should be doing versus the things that you're authentically curious about. And so honestly, like just like be curious, be authentic, like follow the things that you feel like you really are attracted to. And you know, I think like totally believe in law of attraction and like great things will come to you because if you keep walking down the path that you think is like right for you, then other people will join you and you're going to meet really, really incredible people.
Definitely, that makes a lot of sense. And now we got a lot of audience questions. Do you guys want to answer them as we go through them, I guess?
So hiring for a small growing team, important qualities you look for is probably more of a John question, but I've just been writing so many JDs that I'm gonna like chime in. So if you're really excited, so like obviously someone who's like excited about like working in small teams, but I think like one of the really important things that I've seen with like, I think my friends who are working in startups right now is like, you just have to roll with the punches. Like you're someone who's really, really good at driving something forward, but like when things go to shit, you just like need to roll with the punches and take it as they come.
Yeah, I mean, so specifically like before you've hired someone, like the one thing for me, I mentioned this before about at a larger company where you might be more specialized, ideally you're trying to find people that there's some evidence that they're good at doing more than one thing. It almost doesn't really even matter what it is. Like, does it seem like that they have experience where they've had success in kind of two different areas, two different kinds of skills? Because like, again, one of the challenges at a startup is that like you almost never have the opportunity to just kind of have one role. Like your role is changing all the time. And you're just looking for any sort of signals that somebody's gonna be able to kind of do that. So that's one thing. I mean, the role of the punches stuff is really hard to interview for. I mean, it is true though, like once you're at a company, just to, I guess another way to think about that is that like, I think when you start at any company, but certainly at a startup, like usually like you're all excited and then you get there and like you see how things really are and you're like, oh man, like what is happening here? You kind of so there's going to be some sort of trough of disillusionment and what happens after that, right? Like, so that's like, if somebody tells you that they join a company, it's like, it's all great. Like, it's not all great. So,
It's all great. What are you talking about?
Yeah, I mean, like, can you, are you going to be, how are you going to handle that? Are you going to be like, all right, I'm going to help make it better. It's okay that, everything's not perfect all the time, that kind of stuff.
Yeah. So the question is about hiring the right people for a small growing team, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I mean, so I don't have too much to add. I think that everyone else has covered a lot of the bases. Similar to like the answer to my previous question about connecting genuinely, I think the same thing applies to hiring. This question made me think of a specific instance in previous life of mine. I had hired somebody that was very qualified and good at the job that I was hiring for, and there was nothing wrong with them. They weren't a rude person or anything. They just didn't get along super well with the rest of the team, and nothing bad happened. But they ended up leaving after not that long, just because small team, like you kind of, I think you need to get along with the people you're working with. You spend a lot of time together, and so I think that interpersonal fit is important too.
Yeah. Sorry, Vishnu, go for it.
Yes, so we can just answer remaining Q&As, I guess, and we can go on to that.
Yeah. Let's do kind of like when looking for opportunities in startups, what do you find to be a red flag that would steer you away? I think like with like start recruiting, it's kind of much less like clear like kind of what you're getting into versus like big tech. You can every company has a reputation. So kind of what are things that you guys would kind of look out for, right? All of you guys can have joined a startup, like for example, in John's case, you joined your last company.
And also, can
Yeah.
you guys tell what Yasser did right to convince you guys to come in? Because Yasser
That as well.
founder, no experience. Like we don't know much about him, but he still convinced a lot of amazing people to join the team. You tell us what he did right to make people join the team.
I think that's to you, John.
What did
John,
you ask?
go ahead.
Well,
Yeah, so,
well, I mean, let's see. So I guess red flag. So one thing would be, can if you ask the company, can they explain to you the business model succinctly in a way that kind of makes sense to you? Like, can you kind of understand how this company will eventually make money? Because you could usually a startup is going to have like a super dynamic leader who's going to be really, it's going to be some, that's kind of par for the course, right? Like, so the leader is going to be like really dynamic and engaging. And like, then when you kind of go down a level and you're like, okay, but like, how is this going to work as like a business? Like, is there a coherent hypothesis? Like, it probably won't be right, but does there at least like a plan that you can kind of believe in a little bit? Cause like, ultimately, it's gonna be really stressful if there isn't one. So that would be one thing. I mean, you might want to ask them about kind of like their churn, like, in terms of like, do they have, how many employees have started and left, and like, try to get some information about that. Maybe, if they're being very aggressive with, don't let your, make sure you're feeling like you're being compensated fairly, and they don't try to like, just pay you with equity or something, because that would be a red flag. Those are some things.
I think I am particularly wary of the glory, the founders who are looking for glory. I think that there are, a lot of different types of founders, but there's a pretty distinct type of founder to me that is like saying like, oh, I want to start this company because like, I want to be the, I want to be the CEO, and like, they want that, like they're doing it for their own glory. And I think that those companies don't typically last that long, because startups are hard. Like this is not fun every day. And like, you really have to be doing it for the right reasons to make it like for the long haul. And it's also not like startups last a year and then you get to say, oh, like, oh, my junior year of college is done, check mark. It's like, oh, the startup's a year in. It's like, cool, you still have like years and years before it's going to get easy, if it gets easy at all.
Yeah, so I don't think I have like a good gut on like looking for a startup as like an employee, but I do think I have like a good gut kind of as like an investor. And I think a lot of the things I looked at in terms of SIM was very much like, would I invest in this company? Not just my money, but like my, professional like time and commitment and effort. I think that's one thing. And then I think the other thing is like, if it's venture backed, honestly, take a look at the investors and what are the other companies that they've invested in? Like what kind of like investors are there? What's their personality? What's their flavor? Because like as important as a team is, I think it's also really important to know who's standing alongside the team and like who are their partners and who are their friends in this field.
Yeah. No, that's awesome responses. Thank you guys so much. Kind of moving on to a different audience Q&A question. I think this actually came up in Yasiv's talk as well, but it was kind of around like kind of diversity in growing startups. Kind of curious to hear your thoughts on this.
I guess I would wonder, like, I don't think diversity plays more of a role in the start. I mean, it plays a role everywhere. It's I don't know that it's specifically a growing startups issue. I think that, I guess one thing is that a larger company can invest in more tools and pipeline around ensuring that diversity is happening. There's some really great companies in the Boston area that do an awesome job with that. So there's a structure, so at a startup is again one of those things where it's just like you just have to make it a priority if it's going to happen, and you can't have a department of or a chief diversity officer or something, even though it would be amazing to do that. So I guess what I'd say is that you just have to commit to it being a business priority, and making sure you're from the that you are thinking about it in your pipeline, even though it's just there's just such pressure to hire people and grow, and so we've done that. We've made it a kind of a goal for ourselves to make sure we're building a diverse pipeline. We talk about it in our monthly goals, and so it's kind of elevated as an issue. But I guess the only thing to say is it's an issue everywhere. I guess in a startup, it's just like you can't really dedicate a person to it in the way you could a larger company. You have to kind of make it a team sport. So that's my opinion.
Yeah, I mean, I totally agree with what Jon said. Really, really concretely, I mean, there's like the moral argument, which is that we shouldn't be gating certain jobs because they have certain statistics about people. But also, like, a diverse crowd has had more diverse experiences, and so you can look at it like there's a greater chance that you don't miss that thing that causes like some catastrophe. Like you've learned a greater number of lessons by having a greater number of different experiences. So like that's certainly not the only reason, but like very concretely, like you're going to miss fewer things, and like the more optimistic version of that is like you'll have people who are really, really great at doing different things. Like it is, if you have a team of 5 of the exact same person, like you might be as a team, you might be amazing at this one thing, but like you're going to have all these other gaps. And so totally agree with everything Jon said, but like I think that makes things very concrete and from a team perspective.
Yeah, so I think we like talk a lot about this, especially like in this round of hiring and the things that we're thinking about. I think diversity is a really broad word, right? I think like diversity, especially in tech, comes from the inclusion of like different like folks in terms of like age, gender, race, class. I think we think, or like I've been thinking a lot about kind of like the accessibility that SIM has to like all of these different types of folks, because like to be honest, like we play in the B2B like information security space, right? Like that means that a large pool of our candidates are dominated by a particular type of like profile. And I think like going honestly back to the question of like, are there red flags that you would watch for? Like if you're looking at the team and there's not a lot of diversity, you should definitely ask whoever that hiring manager is, like what they intend to do about it and like what their strategic vision is to like not only promote diversity within the team, but also within the broader industry. I do think that like, and I think like SIM believes this, is that like representation of diversity is one. And then when you have it, how do you promote it internally? And then how do you incorporate not just cultural fit, but like cultural add? And I think those are really important things that change depending on company to company. But I think that like leadership definitely needs a roadmap for this type of thing.
Oh, definitely. That's super cool. So we get a few questions asking about the ambiguous, like the fluidity of jobs and changing responsibilities. Do you want to talk about how there's like no clear path on what you got to do, but you change it, like roles change each day. You got like different stuff to do. There's no like set workload, I guess. You kind of want to talk about that, like how you navigate through all the things like this.
I think I just go back to what I said before. The way to prepare is just, I think, to like expect is just to like not get, as I said, try not to get like kind of disillusioned when you get to that startup and you start to kind of see behind the curtain and you see there's like like I don't know, a dumpster fire back there or whatever. Like don't get completely disillusioned by that, like, or don't feel like, I must have joined the one bad startup or something, or like if I had joined that other one I was thinking about, it would be so much better. Like it's probably the same there too. And so I think it's like just being okay with that. And then being okay with there being problems, and maybe along the same vein, like maybe you had these expectations, oh, like these people, they must have figured everything, like oh, okay, you know, they've been doing this for a long time, they must know how to do all the things. And so then if you get there and people don't know how to do all the things, and like they're in it, you're like, well, wait, I thought these were the experts. So obviously there's people with experience, people, you know, who have done things before, but like the reality is, like, especially in a startup, you're kind of by definition doing something kind of new and different. So nobody's really exactly done whatever you're doing before. And it would be kind of weird if they knew exactly how to do it. So I guess I think just the preparation would be like just, and it's like one of these things that's easy to say, and I'm like, it sounds, but then when you get into it, if you start, you know, if you work at a place, you'll realize like, oh, it's very easy to, it can be easy to get disillusioned. So I think that part of it's just being prepared for that to happen. I don't know what else you could do ahead of time to prepare for that kind of thing. I don't know if you folks have ideas.
I think that, I guess as far as like, what is your job and how do you handle like, you know, switching roles and switching business functions, if you want to call it that, you know, as far as that goes, like, I don't think of my job at Sim today as like checking the boxes of a product manager. Like my job is to help make Sim work as a company. I mean, and that's, you know, that's what I love about being on a small team. Like, you know, there are specific things that I own, right? There are projects that I own. And if that project doesn't go well, like, you know, that is on me. But like when I wake up, I think like, what can I do today to make Sim as a product and as a company work? And so I think that mentality is really important for early startups, when what you do day to day could absolutely change.
Yeah, I think I definitely echo what everyone else has said. Honestly, like as just like have conversations with people you know working in the startup space. And I think like everyone's really smart, you know, like when you know that someone's like bullshitting you or like giving you the Kool-Aid, just like tell them and be like, are you giving me the Kool-Aid? Like what are, like actually ask them during the interview process, like, yeah, like these are so many highlights that I'm so excited to kind of work through with you, but what are going to be the unsexiest part of the jobs for the next 6 months? And I think you're going to get a really good gauge of what that's going to look like.
Yeah. Yeah. No. Yeah. I think like the last couple audience questions are just more around like advice. Like, what advice would you give your younger self? What advice would you give someone who kind of isn't super sure about startups, or just like any other advice you want to give to our attendees in general, right?
If you're still in college, take advantage of the fact that your internships can be completely unrelated. They can be wherever you want. Like, please, you know, I encourage you to try a variety of things. It can be very easy to feel like you have to, you know, have the same type of internship your freshman, sophomore, junior years, and like kind of be moving yourself up so you can finally get that job you want, that perfect job you want in the exact same industry after college. Like, it can be very easy to feel like that. And like, I'd be lying if I said like, you know, if you know exactly what you want to do, then go get it. Sure, that's great. But don't underestimate what a variety of experiences can do for you in terms of finding what you
want. I guess I would say something that you know, Jin mentioned that the book about like I don't know, the important decade or whatever.
Defining decade.
But I guess I feel like, I don't know, like I would say like don't be in such a rush. Like it's kind of okay if you haven't like figured everything out when you're, you know, when you're just starting out, and like I guess what I'm saying, you can try different stuff. And yeah, like, you know, I feel like the flip side of that like defining decade thing could be like feeling this pressure of like, well, oh no, I'm halfway through my defining decade and I didn't like define enough yet or something. So that seems like bad. It's like I feel like you shouldn't worry about that.
You could totally tell like the different personalities in this group and the different job functions that we have, right? Like I'm like, go, go, go. John's like, hold up, let's like build a solid foundation, and Adam like speaks to both.
Yeah.
I think that everybody is a star, and you should honestly like do the things that you want to do. Like really do not like be afraid of the different, and like don't think that you need to like maneuver or engineer your career in a way that like is going to be marketable. I think that's important, but it's not as important as you think. And I think that like if you just like go out and experiment to see like the things that you're going to do, you're going to have a much more fulfilling and exciting, journey ahead of you.
Yeah, and actually really quickly, I see a question in the audience that's similar. What advice would you give someone who isn't sure if startups are for them? I think that something that Yasif said on Monday night, he did a similar type of event as this, is really apt here. And you can read about it, and you can hear from us, and you can research the crap out of like, what is it like to work in a startup? But you're not really going to understand what that's like for yourself until you do it at least a little bit. And so if you're still in college, great. What's the risk of doing like a couple month internship with a startup? I think that's true of everything, but especially for startups, like you can only research so much before you just try it.
Yeah, no, thank all of you for that, for the wonderful advice to all of our attendees here. I guess actually on on kind of a similar note, I guess on a similar note, a question that kind of like I heard from top ones I thought was really, really good. So I'm gonna ask the three of you this question right now. If Sim kind of as a company did not exist, like if Sim kind of like disappeared into thin air tomorrow, what are kind of like 2 or 3 companies they can be startups, big tech, and anything really that you would love to join that you think will be kind of awesome companies to work for? Like very high growth, very interesting, very exciting companies to work for. To kind of share with our attendees.
I'll go first on this one. I've been thinking recently a lot about how cities are built and who they're built for. And there's this company by the name of Cul-de-sac that is building legitimately a zero-car city in Tempe, Arizona. And they're going live in 2021. And I'm really curious as to how they thought about equity and diversity and efficiency and all the things you really need to be thinking about when building that city, and like what is going to happen like as like a giant tech social experiment. I think they were pretty cool.
There's this like really awesome coffee place by my house where I order my beans from, and like they're just delicious, and like I know them, they know me, and I would pick up shifts there probably, and that would be one thing. I would probably try to do, or I might, I don't know. I think if I might try to do something more like, I like Jin's idea, something more like, there's another nonprofit in the Boston area called Community Servings, which does these medically tailored meals for people that can't get out to get food, the food they need. So I think, I don't know, I've been thinking about doing stuff like that more in the nonprofit, or either coffee related or like helping other people related. But I guess coffee also really helps people too. So really, that's what I'm thinking about.
John, I like that answer.
It's Adam.
Like I right after I graduated, I had like that crisis. I was like, oh my God, I'm just going to start a job and do that for the rest of my life. And I thought about just like going and working at a gym, because that does make me happy.
Yeah.
Just people in the middle of their workouts, just like, hey, can you get, you need a towel? Like, I'll get you a towel. Have fun, lift those weights. Have fun.
Ryan asked this question thinking we were going to pitch like really awesome, like up and coming companies. And we're like city planner, coffee.
Because we're keeping all our killer ideas to ourselves.
Yeah. But on that note, there is a really cool company called Expanse that is a very different product than SIM, but is also in this B2B security type of space that I considered working with before I joined SIM. And I think that they're growing really fast. I think they do a lot of really cool stuff. They're a later stage than SIM, so it's not quite as comparable. And then also along those lines, I considered trying to do something about the current climate crisis with my computer science kind of product skills. I'm going to find this. You guys keep going. I'll loop back. I'm going to find this paper. There's like a really, really great paper that was published, a year, I think it was in 2019. And it was the most viewed paper in all of computer science, academia at least. And it was basically 40 different ways that machine learning and the machine learning community can impact the current climate crisis. And I thought about just like taking one of those and finding the cheapest rent I could and trying to make something of that, because that is if anyone is not aware, that is an extremely, extremely, extremely pressing issue that it should be on everybody's mind. But you guys go. I'm going to find this paper and I'll figure out how to send it to you guys.
That was amazing.
Cool.
So John, do you want to tell us about how you met Yasif and like how you ended up actually working with him? Because it's a funny story, and like you want to say like what happened, I guess.
Yeah. So Yasif, I met Yasif when I was at Localytics. Yasif was our intern. It was after his freshman year, and he helped us with a project over that summer. Like we were building. The company we were at was an analytics and marketing company, so we had all these marketing dashboards, and Yasif helped us build PDF versions of the reports that you could email to people. I guess back to the networking thing, it was just like I think we just already knew he was kind of a special guy then, and so we kind of stayed in touch with him. Like he was working at our internship. He was, I don't know, the CTO of some other random company at night. He was already like doing a million things. It was ridiculous. And I remember us having a conversation at the time. You're like, yes, if you ever start a company, like let me know. Kind of joking, but not really joking. And then we just stayed in touch. So that's that.
Super cool. And we had two questions in Q&A. Brian, you take a question that's targeted towards you.
Oh yeah. Yeah, I wasn't expecting to ask questions as like a panelist host, but yeah, happy to answer. Yeah, for those of you who kind of aren't aware, I'm part of a kind of on-campus venture capital group called Contrary. Kind of focused on making university stage pre-seed investments. And yeah, we are actually kind of currently kind of, I think, recruiting a new class of venture partners. So if anyone's interested, feel free to kind of go on our website to apply. And feel free to kind of contact me if you have kind of any questions regarding, like, I guess the application process or what that work is like. Yeah.
Ryan, what a star.
Thank you, Jen. And then there's also another audience question on kind of how does SIM foster innovation among its employees? Yeah. So.
Yeah, that's actually it's actually, even you could say, oh well, it's just a few people now, and like we're innovating all the time, but it is actually, especially because we're remote, it is actually hard to communicate ideas and to there's two kind of tensions. There's a tension because we're under huge time pressure, so it's like we don't have time to debate this or think about this. We've got to go. So there's a pressure there, and then there's just the communication pressure of like not being able to sit around and like whiteboard and collaborate on things. So yeah, you have to we actually have to schedule a time where we talk through designs to make sure it happens, because like without that communication, people just end up in silos, and when you're small, then it's really bad to be in silos because it's like, well, only one person knows how this whole system works. You know, they go on vacation and you're out of luck. So you have to, so you have to schedule the time, you have to make sure you make the time and kind of just do the kind of basic, you know, make sure things are documented, you know, stuff like that. I guess we don't really need like a 20% time kind of thing because like, you know, the main product is still the 20% time kind of thing. But even then, you still have to think about it to make it really happen. So.
But I do think that innovation, like that's why I personally like not just sim, but like this stage of startup, because if you think of something innovative, you can just go do it. And then it's done. And then you've innovated. And you don't, you know, like you should maybe check with somebody that you're not going to break their stuff. Or, you know, obviously if there's something that has to happen by tomorrow, you should go do that. But like, you can just go do whatever you want. John, I saw you smirking at that. Did you want to pile on?
I mean, you know, I don't have much to add.
Okay. Welcome.
Okay, just a really quick interruption of our panel. So before we wrap up the Q&A portion of this panel, I wanted to quickly announce the attendance for this event. So I will be pasting a link and a code in the chat. You will need to enter your name, your email, and this code into the form located at that link, and we will enter you in a drawing for one of 5 $20 Grubhub gift cards. So if you missed the free food at Reflections Projections, this is your chance to win one of 5 meals.
Sweet deals. To miss about college.
Yeah, well, we have about 5 minutes left on the panel. So if Vishnu and Ryan, you guys have any other questions you want to ask, or if anybody in the audience has any last questions they would like to ask our wonderful panelists, please go ahead.
Wonderful, thank you. That was very kind. I actually have a question for our I don't know, what are they called?
Moderators?
Yeah, thank you, moderators.
Yeah, gotcha.
Oh God.
What was your favorite part of sim of working here?
Ryan, you want to take this?
Yeah, sure.
Both have to take it.
We'll both take this. Also, I don't know if we can actually establish this at any point. So just kind of for context, Vishnu and I were interns at Sim this summer. Yeah.
John,
but yeah,
all I'm gonna say is, John, there's one theosoph in you, and all I'm saying. That's all I'm gonna say.
Okay. I don't think
Yeah,
that makes sense, but I'm glad you said that.
I tried.
Yeah, I'll say that it's like I think like definitely the I think the kind of my favorite part about Sim has been like the amazing team that I've met so far. And also just like kind of seeing like how quickly the company has grown in the time that I've been here, right? Like kind of when I first joined as an intern, kind of I think Jin and Adam K were just joining. It was kind of those two, and then the 3 kind of co-founders. I think now we have like more than 10 employees, you know, and just in the kind of few short months that I've been here, that's like 4x like increase, right? Which is like pretty crazy, honestly. If you think about it, like the first stand-up, the first all hands, sorry, weren't that many people, and then now the all hands are a little bit more packed. Yeah, so I think like that part was really awesome. I think another part that was really cool was kind of just how cross-functional my role ended up being. Like I think like kind of often at like a large tech company, you're kind of working on a very specific task, and you're very constrained to a specific role. You're kind of interviewing for that role. You're kind of doing that role at the company. But kind of over the summer, I got to work on like I was kind of doing software engineering for the most part, but also got to do a little bit of kind of work around strategy, a bit of work around kind of operations, kind of how that played into kind of what I was working on when I was building. And I also got kind of a little bit more opportunity to kind of influence like kind of the product direction for the kind of specific thing that I was working on. I think versus like kind of most kind of other software engineering interns that kind of large tech companies will get to. So I think that was kind of a really awesome experience for me overall. Yeah, Vishnu, take it away.
So kind of the same thing Ryan said, but also a lot of work we do, it's like a lot of research. It's kind of cool because like when I go into something I don't know anything about, I like spend a day and a half reading about it, implementing it. When I actually get something done, it's kind of cool to like look at the stuff you've done, I guess. That's kind of a highlight, I guess. And like talking to John too, like John's an expert on AWS stuff. It's really good like learning from like people who know a lot about what they're doing. You know what I'm saying? So that's a good thing. And Ryan, we do have one more Q&A from the audience. Do you want to answer that? It's focused at you.
Yeah. So this question is about kind of Soma Capital Fellowship. So also for context, the way that Vishnu and I were introduced to SIM initially was through the Soma Capital Fellowship. So it's a kind of program by a venture fund, Soma Capital, that invests primarily in early stage companies with kind of portfolio companies like Lambda Scores, Stranis, Rappi, etc. And kind of I think a cool part about kind of these like VC fellowships that you can do is like you basically kind of it's harder to kind of find and discover like really exciting early stage startups sometimes. So kind of applying to and getting into a VC fellowship is a great way to kind of find out about actually a lot of like really awesome startups and kind of get in front of these people, right? Vishnu, what are your thoughts?
I'm kind of the same thing what Ryan said, so I totally agree with him on that.
Yeah, I would also add like there's a pretty strong community kind of element to most of these kind of fellowships. Like kind of after Vishnu, I also got to meet lots of other really amazing kind of fellows as part of our community, and that's also been a really cool part of the summer.
So I think we're basically done. John, Adam, and Jin, would it be okay if someone like reaches out to you from this panel, like from the audience?
Yeah.
All right, cool. So I'll share your email the day after it, and I guess we're done.
My email address is John just kidding.
Actually, Adam's email address is not super obvious because we have two Adams.
You should all email adam@simops.com.
That's what I thought you were gonna say.
You should email John and Adam.
Yeah, feel free. I'm happy to follow up with anyone on any other questions anytime.
Jin is spelled Jon at SIMOPS. And thanks everyone for coming. Bye y'all.
Bye everybody.
Thank you so much to the panelists for this wonderful panel and for all the advice that you gave all of our attendees. Thank you so much to all the attendees for attending this panel. I'm also going to be pasting an invite link to the Discord that we are gathering on right now. Both panelists and attendees are welcome to join. I encourage everybody to join because this is the space where we are able to cultivate our RP community during this virtual year. Also, we have a current challenge going on in our Discord challenge channel where you can tell us what are the things that you've been learning at this conference for a chance to win another $20 Grubhub gift card. But again, thank you to the panelists, thank you to Vishnu and Ryan for moderating, and thank you to the attendees for coming.
Bye.